morning, everyone. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to NestGen for inviting me to moderate this panel. It is an absolute pleasure to share this time with such experienced and distinguished panelists. My name is Juan Josola. I am currently work as the Director of Regulatory Affairs and Commercial Space at Mursili Consulting. Before that, I was the head of US Division for the Spanish Civil Aviation Authority. I have also been part of the ICAO Airpass panel, JARUS, and EASA drone focal point. My background is aerospace engineering, and I am a licensed pilot for both traditional aircraft and drones. Today, we will talk about decoding European regulation, compliance, safety, and innovation, mainly focused on autonomous drones and autonomous operation. Automation is an intriguing subject that cuts across several areas and activities in our daily life. So I will proceed without any delay to introduce our panelists quickly. Today with us are Amanda Bockholt, who is the Deputy Head of Strategy and Innovation at FOCA, which is the Civil Aviation Authority of Switzerland. Also, Filippo Tomasello, a Senior Partner at Euro UST Italia. Mr. Yves Morier, retired at the European Safety Agency and French DGC, and Andrew Hatley, who is US-based ConOps Development at Eurocontrol. So I allow them to briefly introduce themselves and kindly ask them to share their experience with the European rules so far. So first, I give the floor to Yves. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As Juan said, I've been a regulator all my life. I've been working for the French Civil Aviation Authority, for the Joint Aviation Authorities of Europe, and finally for the EASA. At the end of my career, I was mostly involved in the drafting of European drone regulation. I have prepared a presentation, but I'm not sure that I see it. So in order not to lose time, I will just make a verbal overview. So these European rules were created in order to create, in fact, a European market. Their characteristic is that they are operation-centric, risk-based and performance-based. Operation-centric, we took, in fact, the advantage that there is nobody on board of a drone yet to create an approach where the risk is essentially related to where the operation is occurring and in the airspace in which the operation is occurring. So risk-based, following that, came as normal, and performance-based was in order to take into account the fact that drone regulations are moving very quickly. EU regulation address safety, security, privacy, and environment. That is in order to be acceptable to the public. And basically, we have four main regulations. One, which is a primary legislation that actually set up the aviation system in Europe and EASA, which include the essential requirements for the drones, and in particular, the obligation for operator to be registered. We have one regulation 219/945, which contains the technical requirement for the drone. Another one, which is 219/947, which are the requirements for drone operation. And then we have a set of three other regulations dated 2021, 664, 665, and 666 that create the U-Space system. As I said, we have created our regulation are operation-centric. So we have created three categories. One, which is the open category, which doesn't require any particular authorization. In fact, the safety is ensured by, I would say, approval of the drones and training for the pilot, and a set of limitations like visual line of sight or operation below 120 and 20 meters. On the other side of the range, you have a certified category, which is we have more or less adopted the same system as for manned aircraft in that case, That is to say, a drone which is certified, a pilot which has a license, and an operator that have an air operator certificate. In the middle, which cover a lot of things, we have a specific category which is basically relying on an authorization given by the national authority based on a risk assessment conducted by the operators. Okay, we have some other flexibilities like standard scenarios, predetermined risk assessment that provide alleviation to this general principle of authorization based on a risk assessment. Regulations for open and specific are complete together with the necessary means of compliance, and they are fully applicable since the 1st of January this year. Except maybe for some national standard scenarios, it can remain usable until 2025. Work is still in progress for the certified category. EU space has been adopted in 2021, became applicable in 2023. EU space airspace are created after I would say risk assessment on safety, security, privacy, and environment are conducted after coordination with the local entities. The Common Information Service, where all the data necessary for the operation of the airspace exists, is one of the key elements of the EU space system. Service providers are certified, so does actually the Common Information Service provider. And those services that are being provided in a given EU space airspace are mandatory: remote ID, identification, geo-awareness, flight authorization and flight information, and two other, weather and conformance, are optional. So I think that was the presentation. I mean, sorry we couldn't share it, but I think I've given you the essentials about the European regulation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yves. Very illustrative. And now I give the floor to Amanda.
I think it's on me. I just had an issue with the audio. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I'm the deputy head of the strategy and innovation section at Forecast of the Swiss CAA, where actually I lead the legal implementation of U-Space in Switzerland. And this section aims somewhat to define the strategy to follow regarding innovation and, if necessary, to implement it. So in the recent years, the focus was mainly on the implementation of U-Space in the EU, with also an emphasis on UTM in general. And now we are seeing a kind of a shift towards data and AI. So the next year will be focusing on data and AI, always with the airspace access in mind. So I started 5 years ago when the 945 and 947 regulations were coming into force across the whole EU, except in Switzerland, because an association had filed a motion in Parliament that postponed the entire regulations effective date to actually last year. And until then, Switzerland had very liberal rules where, for example, there was no set height limit, but you just had to fly, for example, in villas. And back at the time, without a lot of regulation, we were still the first country to grant a BVLOS authorization in the middle of a city to an operator for blood sample delivery. We have seen some resistance when the two regulations came into force from Swiss operator operating solely in Switzerland, for example, because they were more limited than before. And with the implementation of the regulation, there has been a shift towards the professionalization of professions and the harmonization of rules at an EU level while opening markets and borders for operators and service providers. However, we have also seen that access to airspace has become somewhat more complicated and that regulations sometimes struggle to keep up with the industry and the new technologies, which can sometimes be a brake on innovation, actually. So as a regulator, finding a balance between regulating while leaving enough space for innovation is a really challenging balancing act. That's why I think as an authority, and especially the CAAs, we need to be agile, understand the needs of the industry by actively participating, for example, to standardization, taking part to associations, but also communicate proactively to our stakeholders. And as working for FOCA, I have the feeling that we always have been really agile, and we continue to do so. And what is also strength, our strength is that we are a small country. We know our stakeholders, but this agility and our active participation also have been key in U-Space. During these 5 years, as I said, I had the major task of dealing with the implementation of U-Space, both from a legal point of view and in a coordination with the stakeholders. And we played an active role in establishing the regulations, but we also set up some partnership, for example, called SUSI, the Swiss Space Implementation, comprising around 30 members, with the aim of testing and implementing U-Space services and their standards, such as remote identification or strategic conflict detection, so-called UAS flight authorization in the U-Space framework. And I have the feeling that this way of working with the industry is a driving force in finding the right balance between industry needs, innovation, and safety. And currently, we're in the process of implementing U-Space in Switzerland from early experience. These regulations already allow much more room from the industry and new technologies, giving service provider the opportunity to create a whole new market and to organize themselves. For example, through agreements on data exchange, on governance, or on certain choices of standards, for example. But we also expect service provider to be certified, which would ensure trust throughout them, but also with us. Innovation and this greater flexibility does not stop there. It also affects manned aviation with the new criteria, for example, for electronic conspicuity, notably with the old ADSL solutions, that will one day allow the use of mobile network for traffic information. So finally, to ensure that right balance is struck between regulation, safety, innovation, I think that first the CAAs need to work closely with the industry, but the industry also is expected to be active in terms of standardization to bring solution and also evidence and data so that we can scale to more automated operation. And I'm very pleased to see that because there is a lot of more initiatives coming from the industry, for example, with Gutma, in some U-Space initiative in Rotterdam, in Hamburg, or even in the US, for example, with some Dallas initiative. So I'm really happy, and I think we're going into the right path to automation and more complex operations. So I'm really happy to, excited to discuss this today with my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for sharing your views and in your role as a competent authority. And now the next one will be Filippo Tomasello, please. Could you hear me, Filippo? I think you are mute.
Yes, I do. And now I believe that you also to hear me. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you have my slides on the screen. I am Filippo Tomasello from Eurosi Italia. Next, please. So if I may, my colleagues already spoke in general about the European regulations on drones and on U-Space. I would like now to highlight the difference between UTM and U-Space. In fact, several colleagues use the two terms as equivalent, but in reality, they are not. In fact, UTM is a set of 30 different digital services, as listed in the ISO standard, which you see on the left of the screen. The ideas for these 30 services came largely from EU-funded projects, calls, and gaps. And each service has its own designated operational coverage. So in UTM, there is not one volume of airspace in which all services are available, but each service may have a different coverage. Conversely, EU Regulation 664 mainly establishes volumes of airspace within which 4 plus common information services must be available. Next, please, Juan. So, on the left of this slide, U-Space is applicable in the Union. It mainly establishes what ICAO calls restricted areas, because there are conditions to enter area. There is decision by the state for these volumes, and they have to carry out an airspace safety assessment and certify the services. Conversely, in ICAO and ISO, each service may be certified by industry, and the two things intersect, because some of the services which are not mentioned in EU Regulation 664 may nevertheless exist in U-Space volumes. Okay, thank you. I have finished, Juan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Filippo, for highlighting the difference between UTM and U-Space. And now, last but not least, I give the floor to Andrew.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I work for Eurocontrol. Eurocontrol is a pan-European international organization. We have 41 member states. We have 2 states that we have special agreements with. They cannot join because they're not physically in Europe. And we have a working relationship with the EU. The EU is a member in a kind of strange way. So we have really 2 roles. We have an operational role. We provide services like the network manager, and we have a technical role. And this technical role has 3 aspects. We provide support to states. We offer training, and we get involved in research, including having a major input into the CESAR projects. And that's where I work. And I have worked in research projects to do with the development of UTM, and I was involved in developing this concept of operations in the Chorus project that Filippo just mentioned. And in that project, we described how these services would work, how they would interact, and how they would allow safe flight in U-Space. So Eurocontrol has provided support to states who are interested in exploring this. Eurocontrol has provided support to EASA. We have helped develop the regulations. We have supported the development of the acceptable means of compliance and guidance material, which goes with the regulations. Typically, the regulation will be very brief and will say, do this. And the acceptable means of compliance will say, you can do it in this way if you follow some standard or some other procedure. We've also taken part in the development of some of these standards, which are referred to in the regulation. And one area where we're very active is we've written a handbook for this airspace risk assessment process that Filippo talked about. It will finally appear in 4 volumes. The first volume has been published. The second one we're concluding. It should be published very soon. And this handbook is aimed at getting states to a position where they can comfortably perform airspace risk assessment on their own. Eurocontrol has been supporting states in doing this, but our aim is training rather than consultancy. We are not going to be around to support every airspace risk assessment. We just would like to help develop the method and get people going. So I know that Amanda's team have had some interaction with us and have gone on to do airspace risk assessment successfully. I think there's quite a number of other states who are involved in this, so I may say something about that. In fact, my colleagues mostly work on that. I'm more involved in the concept stuff, but I'm here to present the Eurocontrol point of view. Thank you, Juanjo.
Thank you very much, Andrew. There is it's very interesting what Eurocontrol is doing to develop this all of these CONOPS, and of course the airspace risk assessment. That is something that is very, very new and is very challenging for all of us. So I would like to start the debate. So I can just steer the conversation with some questions. First one, Filippo, you have shared with us the difference between your space and the AKOTM, but how do you think autonomous operation impact in both in them?
Well, one of the postulates on which we are developing UTM is that there is no human air traffic controller. Everything is digital and all these services are provided digital. No wonder we already have them. For instance, in our mobile telephone, we all use satellite navigation to have our position and find the path, and we receive there even geographical information. Equally, when we download meteorological information, also we interact with no human. In the future, this would be also for separation. Already today in Regulation 664, we have what that rule calls flight authorization, which is no more and no less than what we know as flow management. But even flow management is mainly digitized between the unit in Brussels and all the airspace users across Europe. And this would continue. On the other side, we know that even drones are becoming more and more autonomous. And so they will exchange data with other objects in the so-called Internet of the Things. For instance, ISO 5491 already standardizes the exchange of data between the approaching drone and the vertiport without any human intervention. In the end, when the aircraft will be able to govern its trajectory and its status without any remote pilot, according to some colleagues, the remote pilot will simply disappear. But the company, the operator, would still remain accountable and liable. And even if the flight is autonomous, someone may need to plan the flight before it happens, obtain the authorizations, interact with certain services, and should it be necessary, activate the emergency response plan. So except piloting, there are some tasks which remain. And in this moment, the idea in the community is that this person executing these tasks could be called a fleet manager, without having piloting skills, but more or less being the digital evolution of the flight dispatcher.
Thank you very much, Filippo. It's quite interesting. Let's see how it is progressing, not only in Europe but also in the rest of the world. My next question will be to Amanda, and I figured out that is the same question that Vitaly has posted in the chat. So, when it is expected to have full-scale VVLOS operations in the European framework?
So, I mean, there is VVLOS operation, and there is autonomous flight, right? It's not the same. Actually, in the EU and in Switzerland, there is already BVLOS flight. But the issue is that, for example, we need to ensure full communication, full range communication. We need to ensure that where you want to fly, you have traffic information. So in Switzerland, we know that in controlled airspace, this is the location where we intend to designate the first use-based airspace. Drone operator will have traffic information, surveillance data, because there is the ANSP there that is providing those information directly to the drone operators. When it comes to uncontrolled airspace, there it's for us a more complicated airspace, because there is for now no obligation for airspace users to be completely conspicuous, for example. So there, the drone operators need to find some solutions. We, as FOCA, want to have and develop our second use-based airspace in uncontrolled airspace. We are looking towards solutions. So to install some equipment or have some infrastructure that allows drone operators to collect such data. But also we need to ensure that the airspace user will be conspicuous. So this is more for BVLOS operation. When we're targeting maybe more autonomous, I don't think it's tomorrow, because it will depend on really several factors like technological advancements, regulation, improvements in safety and air traffic management, and as well as public acceptance. In terms of technology, I mean, I know that technological advancements continue to reduce the barriers to full autonomy for drones, with some significant actually improvements in detect and avoid systems, AI, machine learning, algorithms, and so on and so forth. And those technologies are really crucial for ensuring that drones can operate safely, obviously, and efficiently without the human in the loop. And here, standards will play a crucial role. I know, and I'm seeing that the industry is becoming more mature by taking more time to develop their technology and associated standards. However, the technology is not yet fully developed at this point, and it's not only about the technology, it's also, for example, about the regulation. Here, EASA is really playing a key role in shaping the regulatory framework for the drones in Europe. And this regulation are evolving to address several challenges of integrating drones into the airspace, focusing on safety, privacy, security, for example. And the pace at which fully autonomous operations are adopted will heavily depend on the development and the implementation of this regulation. At the moment, the existing regulations do not allow the use of fully autonomous drones, but they are moving in that direction, notably with the use-based regulation that allows BVLOS operation, maybe not at full scale, but I mean, they will allow BVLOS operation, probably even network of use-based regulation. The question mark is what and how can we develop BVLOS operation outside use-based, for example. On the safety and air traffic management, I mean, ensuring that safety of autonomous drone operation and their integration into the existing air traffic system is really crucial. And this is where, for now, use-based is the first step toward this. That includes system for communication, navigation, surveillance to manage drone flights alongside manned aircraft. And what is key here, and sometimes we forgot about this, is public acceptance. I mean, public perceptions and acceptance of drones are vital for the expansion of autonomous drone operations. There is a lot of concerns about privacy, safety, and noise levels that need to be addressed to gain public support. And then at the end of the day, there is the market demand and the applications, which probably will not be the same in the US or in the EU or in Australia or in Asia. So those are the 5 points for me, the 5 pillars that need to be addressed before going full scale, full autonomous operation and full BVLOS flight.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, yes, that there are concepts that are linked, use space, autonomous, and of course BVLOS. So
could I just jump in? I would draw your attention to the fact that there is a little bit of coverage of autonomy already in the use-based regulation. There are mention of contingency procedures in the case of lost link. And when the aircraft has lost its control link, it is flying autonomously. And you'll find mention of that here and there. There's a requirement in the regulation, and then the acceptable means of compliance, there's a requirement that these contingency procedures should always be deconflicted. So I think there is the beginnings of something about autonomy in the EU regulations, and I would see it as being a natural step that this could be expanded as interest in autonomy grows. And we should be realistic. As Filippo said, the pilot of a remote aircraft has not the same abilities or a sense of awareness of the pilot of a manned aircraft. So there's already the first kind of step towards autonomy in that most of these flights are flying following a path which has been entered into the aircraft, and this person remotely, even in the best of cases, is more of a supervisor than a hands-on pilot. So we have gradation of autonomy naturally, and we have some handling of it in the regulation. So we're going in the right direction, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. Just with your last reflection, I would like to connect it with the next question that I have for Yves, because we know that training in aviation is a crucial aspect, but with increasing autonomy in operation, Yves, in your opinion, what are the key points for training, or what will be the real role of pilots in this context?
Thank you, thank you, Juanjo. Yes, it's a rather complicated question at the time being, but very, very interesting one. I would just like to start by confirming that actually autonomy was envisaged right from the beginning in the EU regulation. We have forbidden it in the open category, also in the standard scenario and the predetermined risk assessment, but the door was open. So there is a possibility, and even there is some, when you look at the responsibilities and of the operator, that is to say the organization that operates the drone and the pilot, you will see that there are mentions like you need to identify what are the responsibilities, what are the tasks which are taken by, I would say, the autonomous system and the pilot. It's not very precise, but I think it's a beginning. The beginning, as Andrew was saying, it's a beginning of something. So to go a little bit beyond that, we could say that we have perhaps already aircraft like the one produced by Wisk or the one produced by EHang, which are where there is no pilot on board, which are actually drones, in fact, with people on board, but no pilot on board. In those cases, I think they are a little bit remotely piloted. The question is still, what can the pilot do? So if you look at what EASA has done, for example, in terms of those eVTOLs, is to use a process which is called operational suitability data, which is in general a process that obliges the manufacturer to define the essential requirements for the training of pilots, mechanics, flight attendants, etc. So EASA intends to use that to provide a type rating for such machines, which could be applicable to either fixed wing or helicopter pilot. So the process is a little bit difficult because at the beginning of the OSD process is compare the aircraft to other aircraft. And the problem is that we have no comparison really at the time being, but it's certainly procedurally a way to do it. On a more technical ground, there is what GAMA, the General Aviation Manufacturer Association, has developed, which is called Simplified Vehicle Operation, in which, and I hope people will not take me wrong when I say that, they actually deconstruct the pilot in the sense that they identify what can be done by the systems, by the machine, and what can be done by the pilot. And so it's a way to then using such a process to identify what is the remaining training for the pilot, or as Filippo was saying, the person that supervises, a fleet manager. There could be several terms to be given to that. And this process means that, okay, if a pilot do something, or if a person do something, she must be trained to do it. If the system take a certain responsibility, it must be certified in accordance with the criticality of the system. That's very quickly the idea of the simplified vehicle operation. Now, Amanda mentioned the word AI. I think that when you look at autonomy is basically AI, in fact. It will rely on high-level models of artificial intelligence. And then you come to another question is, looking at the level which are possible for AI in accordance to the ESA roadmap, you see that there could be AI that assists the pilot. There could be ultimately AI that will do everything. But in the middle, you have actually AI that could be seen as a co-pilot. So one part of the training of the pilot or the person that operates the machine will be also to how to cooperate with the AI. So it's not using a system anymore, but it's to work with a system which is actually a co-pilot. Sorry if my terms are a bit layman, but I try to express how I understand it. I'm not an expert, but I think here there is another dimension to the training which is being added, is that you are going to cooperate with a system which is not a system, but which is actually someone who helps you and has his own way of thinking. So that's very broadly what I could say about training.
Yes, thank you, Yves. Maybe you can answer the another question that we have from Vitaly, which is, will training on flight simulators be necessary in the future of using drones?
Well, I would say certainly, well, simulation seems to be the future in terms of training. Advantage, you can do a lot of things in a less risky manner, when I think of manned aircraft, but also for drones, there are already simulators that, for example, help you to simulate the mission. So you create your mission, you simulate your mission, and you see what could be the difficulty that you are facing. So yes, for me, there will be simulators for drone in the future. And when there will be drones which are carrying passengers, which are the system produced by Wisk and by EHang, you will have actually no pilot on board, but there will be a need to train those pilots and using some probably virtual reality simulators that still start to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yves. I think we have you all have commented some aspects of the flights, the automation, but I would like to ask all of you about which application could be or will be the main ones considering this future fully autonomous operation.
Medical services during emergency. For instance, to bring a defibrillator in few minutes somewhere. We cannot have one remote pilot next to each drone waiting that the defibrillator is necessary. So these operations have to be autonomous. Equally, surveillance of critical infrastructures or perimeters of factories with drones sleeping in a box until something triggers the drone flights, which can be a sensor, but can be also the security control room because they want to inspect. And these operations are relatively short range and very low level. so they would have minimum interference with other airspace users.
Thank you, Filippo. Maybe one of you want to share your views on this?
I'm fully aligned with Filippo. I think what is really the demand and the kind of operation will definitely depend on where you are. It will not be the same in the US or in Australia, where there are many isolated houses over many kilometers. For example, I mean, the geography and the density, the population density play here a crucial role in how technologies, how autonomous drone operation are adopted and utilized. So I think in any case, emergency and rescue services, surveillance and inspection, of course, maybe agriculture as well. In Switzerland, we have a lot of vineyards, a lot of crop spraying companies. So this is maybe also here a targeted kind of operation that will trigger full autonomous operation.
Yeah, I would echo Filippo. This drone in a box solution is something where the drone will fly on response to some external trigger. And we cannot expect to have somebody sitting around waiting to pilot that drone. It's commercially infeasible, and it's like no kind of job for anybody to have to sit and wait and then suddenly be flying. So these drone in a boxes are a classic case for automation and autonomous flight, that probably they would respond to some alert and they would go and take a picture of what's happening, and it would need to be fully autonomous. The problem that we have to solve is the one that the fleet manager will be involved in, which will be the escalation of the unexpected. When we have some helicopter there which wasn't planned or something like that, then there will be a need to escalate to some improvised activity. But for routine operations, I think autonomy is going to come very fast because it reduces uncertainty, it reduces cost, and it will actually make the control by an automatic means easier, because we'll have machine talking to machine. There won't be the human there doing unexpected things.
Yes, I think everything is connected, because you have commented about this medical delivery or this kind of blue lights operation, and I think it's connected with something that is for me was a very good point that Amanda mentioned about the social acceptance. Maybe the first step is to start doing this autonomous flight for this purpose, because could be more acceptable for society. What do you think about this?
So in Switzerland, this is what we saw. A lot of operators are coming to us with, they have plenty of ideas. They want to deliver plenty of projects, but the first use case they're coming to us is blood sample, medicaments between hospitals, pharmacy, and this is really the first application that we're seeing in Switzerland. We have also long-range BVLOS operation, but it's Rega, which are a HEMS operator. They are using now drones to do search and rescue and some kind of missions. So the population are more used actually in Switzerland for now to go with healthcare and everything touching health. We are seeing now other kind of use case with more delivery of products of logistical surveillance, but for now we know that the public is not really receptive. So health is first, and then we can probably open the door to other solutions and other projects.
Thank you. We have another question, but I think it's more for Yves, because Tengo is asking about if there is any implementation plan for regulation 945 and 947. So we know that many things have been published by EASA this year. But do you have any news on this?
Thank you, Juanjo. Can you repeat the question, please? You've been broken, at least from my side.
Okay, yes. The question is from Tengo. He asked, are there any new implementation planned for 945 and 947?
Okay, yes, there are. I would say quite a number of ideas, but I think they are described, by the way, in the European Plan for Aviation Safety, or also in the the EU Drone Strategy 2.0. Perhaps, in my view, the most important one is to, at the time being, to take, in fact, the lessons learned of the beginning of implementation of those regulations, be it 945 or 947, and to see what kind of improvement could be brought. There are other ideas, but I think that's probably the most important one. And perhaps another significant one, I would say, would be the implementation of JARUS SORA 2.5, which hopefully can start at the beginning, start at the end of this year. But that I think what I could mention, with perhaps maybe another point, which is in the EU Drone 2.0 strategy, is trying to capitalize on the synergy between military or state operation and civil operation. There were some ideas, for example, to develop standard scenarios that could also be usable by the military. So that's some thoughts at what could come in the future. Thank you.
And if I have 1 minute to compliment my friend Yves, in Europe, EASA has published 5 predefined risk assessments, which alleviate the burden on the operator to produce the risk assessment itself. But these 5 risk assessments, more or less, are copy and paste from JARUS. But JARUS has around 10 predefined risk assessments. Some of them are finalized by JARUS, but not yet transposed by EASA, but nothing prevents an operator to use as a reference the JARUS PDRA and then go to the authority and say, I have adopted this assessment. This would also reduce the burden on the operator. Then the authority may agree or not agree, but at least not everything would be invented by the operator.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for raising up this predefined risk assessment, Filippo, because it's connected with, I think, with another question that we have from Tengo. He mentioned he asked, what do you think to divide agricultural drones from some kind of subcategory, as the risks are different? I think one of the JARUS PDRAs is for spraying, and there are others that are related for many applications. One is for these big aircraft that have been tested at the site. Others are related with VB-loss operation in a typical airspace, because they are flying very close to some lineal infrastructures. So I think Filippo, if you can develop it a little bit more, we can ask this question about if we have to divide this kind of applications.
Okay, for agriculture, we can already operate without any permission in the open category with the drone up to 25 kilos and in VLOS. This may be useful for surveys, but for spraying any products, 25 kilos may not be enough. We need the larger drones. And in fact, JARUS has almost finalized one PDRA for agriculture, which would allow use of a drone up to 100 or 200 kilos. And with this mass, you may transport and spray a sufficient amount of fluids or seeds or whatever, which makes this application interesting. And another things which you may need for agriculture is to use extended visual line of sight, having one or more observers in the field, so covering not 300 or 400 meters, but 2 kilometers, which would allow you to better exploit the endurance of your drone going to the far end of the field without artificial intelligence and without complexity of technology.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are running out of time, so I request a sentence summarizing your intervention from all of you, if you can. So we can start with Andrew.
I think I'm a researcher. I'm very interested in research topics. I would very much be interested to see if we could push some of the interesting work being done in autonomy, the interaction between autonomous control and piloting, into a regulation that we can deploy in Europe.
Okay, thank you very much. Filippo, please.
Yes, our main difficulties in applying 947 was the time taken by the authority to respond to application. It can go up to 6 months, if not more. It's really enormous for the market because end users want their own operations quite quickly. How to overcome this, reducing the workload on the authorities without detriment to safety, has already been invented by the European legislator. In Regulation 1139, we have qualified entities. But so far, EASA and the national authorities have been reluctant to exploit these qualified entities, and this is damaging the progress of the market.
Thank you, Filippo. As we have recovered Amanda, Amanda, please, can you provide us with a sentence to summarize what we have discussed today?
Yes, I think so. We saw that we have the regulation. They are now in place. Use space in the 947, 945. There are some standards that are now out. So I think so. The first step before starting to thinking about autonomous, or I mean, we need to have autonomous in mind, autonomous operation. But start using those regulations, start using those standards, and based on that, come to us, come to the authorities with some solution, with some improvement solutions, so we can improve the regulations and take to the next steps. That is full autonomous operation. So please use everything that is already here. Come together with the industry standardizations body, create a new way, not create a new way, but try to fill the gap of the regulation. And I think then we can go to full autonomous operation.
Okay, thank you. And the last but not least, Yves, please.
I think to me what is really important at the time being is to, again, see how those regulations that were created to a certain extent a little bit from scratch using the JAWS work, but with not much of experience. Remember, they were created in 2019. How they actually function in face of the reality, in face of the implementation. So I think for me, the big word is to assess the effectiveness, to maybe look at some of the issues that Filippo has suggested, and from there propose, I would say, improvement, how to improve, I would say, both open and specific category. One could have some ideas to, I don't know, rebalance a little bit the boundary between open and specific, and also finalize the work on the certified category, because the certified category, we don't speak much about it at the time being, but may become important when we will start operation above cities with very dense population, we may need actually to operate in the certified category and perhaps also some other kind of operation. So that would be my idea. Let's improve what we have based on experience, and let's finish the work with a certified category. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to our panelists and audience for this great European drone regulation and autonomy discussion, and many thanks to NestGen and their team for organizing this event. I think we have already finished, so thank you very much.